Well, this morning, Sean Diddy Combs is still behind bars following yesterday's blockbuster verdict in his criminal case. Combs was acquitted of the most serious charges, but still faces up to 20 years in prison. But the judge, citing Combs' history of violence and past illegal conduct, has declined to release Combs as he awaits sentencing. Joining us now is CNN legal analyst and criminal defense attorney Joey Jackson. Joey, yesterday after the verdict came, there was some thinking among legal analysts that he could be released. Were you surprised by the decision by this judge?
Yeah, Pamela, good morning to you. Not surprised, and I would certainly concur with that thinking because the judge could have very well done that, right? There's a couple of things the judge could consider. Let's talk about from the defense perspective. There's two real things. Number one is he a flight risk? Do you really believe that he would be a flight risk pending sentence, right? Especially when he was acquitted of a charge that can keep him in jail for life, knowing the consequences of trying to flee from the court's jurisdiction? I think not. Number two, is he a danger to the community? Look, there was conduct certainly that was raised during the trial. The tape was awful as it relates to the beating of Cassie Ventura. But you can argue, right, what is the danger that he poses? So on those, from that scenario, I don't see why the judge would keep him in if there are, and the law says, Pamela, if there's any condition or combination of conditions that could ensure his return to court. And there certainly are, restricting your passport, limiting where you can travel. So I get it. From a prosecution's perspective, however, listen, the judge certainly could have concluded he has certainly exposure in terms of him being sentenced, and there's an argument. Prosecutors say it's 4 years. The defense says it's 2. They'll make the argument in terms of what he's eligible for. But if a judge is thinking about giving him 2 years, you keep him in. He's being sentenced sometime in October, presumably. He'll accrue more time, and he'll get credit for the 10 months he's in. He serves, a number of other months, and he's out. So that could have been the judge's thinking as well. But the judge certainly would have been well within his discretion yesterday, Pamela, to release him.
And the judge has proposed that October sentencing, but also said he's willing to move it up at the defense's request. What kind of sentence do you think Combs will end up facing, and do you think that his past jail time will factor in?
So I think without question, in terms of the past jail time, you're always going to get credit for time you've already served, and he served the 10 months, and that'll be the calculus. I think there'll be certainly an argument between prosecutors who want more time. What happens in federal court is the judge is allowed to consider what's called, quote unquote, relevant conduct. So even conduct for which you're not charged, but conduct which is, somewhat bad, right? The judge could evaluate that into the mix to give you a higher sentence. So there'll be an argument from prosecutors as to all this relevant conduct and all the things we heard about what he did during the trial and how the judge should be more severe with him. And from a defense perspective, you'll hear about the fact that this is a first offense. You'll hear about the fact that he was acquitted of the RICO charge, that is the racketeering that could have kept him in jail for life. You'll hear about the fact that the jury did not buy the sex trafficking, which would have carried a minimum of 15 years. And on that basis, Judge, we should be here to sentence him, for which the jury, which is a system we respect, really found him guilty of. And if you do that, the calculation would be more along the lines of 2 years as we look at the counts there. And so it's always up to the discretion of a judge, Pamela, no matter what anybody says. But I think the calculated guideline range, which is from 21 months to 27 months, is reasonable and accurate. And I think certainly that's something that the judge could adhere to.
Just very, very quickly, the fact that the judge is keeping him behind bars until sentencing, how does that bode for his actual sentencing? You have to wonder if it'll be maybe more serious than it may otherwise have been if he was released. I don't know what you think.
So, Pamela, that's true, and that's a great question, but it may not be, right? Because if you're thinking about sentencing him to even the guideline range for which defense attorneys have, and I keep mentioning guideline range very briefly, what happens in the federal system is they calculate the offense, specifically what are you actually convicted of, and they match it against your criminal history. There's a chart, and there's a certain amount of months in the federal system you get, and they call it a guideline range. Now, the guideline range, again, for prosecutors is much higher than it is for defense attorneys. But ultimately, the fact that the judge kept him in could very well mean he's done 10 months. His guideline range is 2 years and change anyway. If I keep him in and I sentence him in October, even if I give him a couple of years, you do 85% of your time in the federal system, he would be out, right, presumably sometime next year. So it's not reading into it that, he kept him in, he's going to slam him at time of trial, or at time of sentencing. I don't read that into it. I think it'll be fair, reasonable, and objective, but there'll be arguments on both sides for sure.
Joey Jackson, thanks so much. We'll be right back.